The Baltimore Golf Academy is now enrolling for its 2011 classes at Pine Ridge, Mount Pleasant, Forest Park, Clifton Park, and Carroll Park. Reserve your spot today at classic5.golf, classic5golf.com. Welcome back to Inside PressBox. Joining me now, as promised, is the man who wrote this month's cover story for PressBox. You're looking at the cover, Michael Anft. And Michael has written many stories for us before, cover stories. This is my favorite one. I really thought you did a fantastic job on this topic.
Oh, great. Thanks, Dan.
We kicked the tires on this issue about 3 months ago. We said we wanted to do something while the lockout was in because there probably wouldn't be a training camp. And what you've done really, and I hope this sums it up, is you fast forwarded through the average NFL player's career, post-playing career, what they go through both mentally, physically, emotionally, and to their untimely demise.
Well, we're lucky that there are numbers out there that show what the financial status is of players, both while they're playing and afterwards, what the health status is, how often they're hurt. And there's a lot of course, emerging information, as the John Mackey case shows, of how brains are affected by playing football over a long period of time. And how these hits that players take, not necessarily the ones you see on ESPN or the ones that bring concussions and fines, but just the hits they take over the course of years, the kinds of effects they have on the brain. So there's a lot to get at now in terms of what the average player's life is like and how long they live. We know that they only live to 55.
55 or 56,
as
and the
an
lineman
average,
might be 50.
Right, 50 seems to be the average that most people are coming up with. The larger players don't tend to last as long. And I think that's kind of shocking for a fan to hear, that your heroes aren't going to last all that much longer after they're retired. What's
amazing to me is it's kind of like a whiplash effect. A lot of players, I mean, I've read statistics that about 75% of NFL players end up in severe financial distress.
Yeah, within 2 years of retirement.
Yeah.
They don't manage their money well. They're used to receiving a large salary. The median salary is $770,000 a year. The average is higher, but most players receive $770,000. They get used to spending that money, but their careers only last between 3 and 4 years, about 48, 49 games. So if they spend all that money up front and then maybe spend a year or two trying to get back in the game once they're cut, and 320 players, about 10 per team, are cut every year, they're going to spend more money, and it's more money they won't have later. And the pension for the NFL doesn't kick until about age 45.
Right.
And it's not very much. And if you're going to die at 50 or 55, that's not many years when you're going to get that benefit.
Now, I know your story wasn't about the Players Association particularly, specifically.
Right. And DeMaurice Smith would not return my calls, by the way.
He did not return your
several calls.
But I've got to ask you a question. The owners are the owners. They own the business. They own the goodwill with all this. The players are employed by the owners, but shouldn't it be their union's job to look out for them better?
You would think. You would think that a basic thing like longevity would be something that the NFLPA could rally around. So our guys are dying younger. We should be doing more with helmets. We should be doing more with protection. Maybe instead of you adding 2 games to our regular season, as was discussed early on in the lockout. I don't think it's being discussed anymore. Maybe we should play 2 less games, or maybe guys should get, certain players should get bye weeks. They should get 2 or 3 weeks off a year. So just to minimize the damage a little bit and see if they live longer.
Or how about AstroTurf? Maybe these guys shouldn't play on concrete covered by green carpet.
Right.
A novel thing like that.
Sure.
How about the players? What level of awareness do you think the guys in Bruce Laird's day had versus today? I know that's conjecture on your part.
Bruce Laird's day, I don't think they had any idea of the shorter lifespan. Really, they might have thought, well, maybe it'll take a couple years, but 55, that the average rate, life expectancy is about 75. It's 20 years less, which is incredible. I don't think the Laird era players, or the ones before them, or the ones even after Bruce played, had any idea. But now there's a lot of information out there, particularly about how playing the game affects your brain. CTE is a big factor now. There are a lot of players, including Matt Burke of the Ravens, who've decided that when they die, they will donate their brains to Boston University neuroscientists who will dissect the brain. And in most cases,
the level
of brain damage. Yeah. Right. The chronic traumatic encephalopathy is prevalent in most of the brains that have already been donated by NFL players, including Dave Duerson's, who shot himself in the chest to commit suicide instead of his head because he wanted his head preserved so his brain could be dissected. There's no way to diagnose CTE while a player's alive. That's the problem. There's no MRI or whatever that can get at that. So, but I think players are aware. Chris Henry died at age 26 in that accident when he fell off a truck.
And they did his brain.
They did his brain, and he had CTE at age 26. So I think players, younger players, probably have at least some idea, and there may be a denial about it too, which is another issue. But there's certainly information out there to let them know that down the road you're going to have problems, and they may be the kind that just rob you either of years of your life or your mental status.
And the diminished mental capacity can lead to ending up losing all the money for the few that might be able to hold on to their money, like Dave Duerson and John Mackey lost all of his money during the period he was entering into dementia.
And football players, frankly, once they retire, don't need help losing money. They're pretty good at that when they have their faculties, unfortunately.
You're a pretty inquisitive guy. How much of this entire lockout is less about what players are going to make today as it is about this issue of future litigation or protecting against things from future generations with their health care?
I haven't heard much, quite frankly, about health care. I'm not on the beat, on the NFL beat or the lockout beat, but I haven't heard much about health care. I know that the retirees are trying to get much more attention, as Bruce just explained. But I don't think that's the issue. The issue is how they're going to divide the money pie. That's the main issue. I still think health and the way the battering that players take and how it affects their lives is still way off to the side.
Well off to the side. You did a fantastic job, Michael Anft.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. The article is on the cover of PressBox, or you can go to PressBox online and read it. It's called Led to Slaughter, and we thank Michael Anft for writing that. We'll be right back with the ESPY-nominated Athlete of the Year, Maryland native Travis Pastrana. For news about the Ravens, visit csnbaltimore.com. John Eisenberg speculated what the Ravens might do during a period of free agency once the NFL lockout ends. You can read that article and more at csnbaltimore.com.